Meeting to order. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Whoops. Auspicious start. Clerk Spencer, please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Gutenkopf.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Tipskin. Absent. York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy. Absent. Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner. Absent. 10 present, 3 absent.
10 present, 3 absent. We have a quorum. Agenda item number 2, we have a couple of folks and a couple of presentations, a couple of people we'd like to recognize. I would ask Brian Burhager and Kathy Siegert to meet me up at the dais, please. At the podium. Okay, the Historical Museum and the Heritage Foundation hold an annual contest, the Ruth Strand Poster Contest, in honor of Ruth Strand, who was director of the library, I want to say, for over 20 years. Does that sound about right?
Longer.
20 years, and without any further ado, I'm going to invite Brian Burhager up. He is also accompanied by Kathy Siegert. Kathy is on the board of directors of the Heritage Foundation and chairperson of the 2013 Ruth Strand Poster Contest. Brian?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm very proud to be here tonight to help introduce these kids from Elmhurst schools who have been selected as winners in the Ruth Strand Poster Contest. The kids have a keen interest both in history and in learning, and these are 2 traits that will serve them very well as they mature and become adults and become contributors to their own communities in the future. So I offer them my sincere congratulations this evening. The Ruth Strand Poster Contest is one of many initiatives of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, which is the support arm of the Elmhurst Historical Museum. It serves as the advocacy and fundraising arm for our efforts at the Historical Museum. The Foundation's work makes the museum a much better place for all residents of Elmhurst, both young and old, and for that I'm very grateful. The board's comprised of community members who give of their time and their talent on behalf of the Historical Museum and the city of Elmhurst itself. They're remarkable individuals, but as an organization, they make their greatest impact. And I thank the board for its work year-round, and in particular for its work on this year's Ruth Strand Poster Contest. Tonight I'm pleased to introduce one of those board members, Kathy Siegert, who served as the chairperson for the Ruth Strand Poster Contest. Kathy?
The Ruth Strand Poster Contest is named in honor of former director of the Elmhurst Public Library and a founder of the Elmhurst Historical Museum. Very interested in history and left a fund which is managed by the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation to support education, history education in particular. Education about things going on in Elmhurst. And one of the ways we use that fund is by sponsoring this Ruth Strand annual poster contest. 2nd and 3rd graders in Elmhurst schools participate in the contest by drawing a poster and writing a description of some historical place in Elmhurst. Some of the posters have things that are no longer in existence, and some of them have very current things that you're very aware of and see as you drive around Elmhurst all the time. We had 356 entries into the poster contest this year, and we have a total of 14 winners. We wound up with a first place award, a tie for second, and a tie for third place. And city officials, school district officials, staff at the museum, directors of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, and almost anyone we can drag off the street come in to the Education Center and vote, looking at all 356, and believe me, it takes a long time for them to get through that. We had a reception on May 22nd for all of the winners and their families, and the children all received certificates and a goodie bag with prizes. They participated in the Elmhurst Memorial Day Parade on one of the city pickup trucks outfitted with park benches. We as foundation members got to walk in the parade, where they got a ride. So this is a culminating activity to be honored, to be recognized at City Council. And I'm going to read all of the names of the honorable mention. If any of you are here, please come up. So, because I don't know all of you. I mean, I've seen a lot of you, but it's like, oh, I called someone by the wrong name last week at the parade. So please come up if I read your name. I'm going to say the name of the student, the school that they go to, and what their topic was for their poster. Teague Holler from Lincoln School did York High School. Ashley Zwolinski from Visitation School, come on, did Wilder Mansion. Come on over here. Stand right here. Emma Casey from Hawthorne School did the Gloss Memorial. Madison Tran from Jefferson School did the Veterans Memorial. Oh, you have your own contingent of Jefferson staff members. Gabriella Sauls from Jackson School did the Bird's Nest Chapel, one of those things you don't see anymore, and a lot of people don't even know about it. Lily Hoffer from Emmanuel Lutheran School did the Elmhurst Stone Quarry. Christian Velasquez from Conrad Fisher School did the Lazadro Museum. Autumn Karaher from Emerson School did the Bicentennial Fountain. Now, that's one most of us know about. Aaron Hudson from Field School did the Churchville Schoolhouse. Those were all of our honorable mentions. Now, you girls just stay here, please. Then our third place tie, Eric Anderson from Jefferson School did the Pioneer steam engine, which came through Elmhurst on July 4th, 1849. It's not around here anymore. Lauren Richards from Emerson School did the Elmhurst Airport, which is now the Industrial Park near Grand Avenue. Rachel Schrag from Lincoln did the Wilder Mansion. Rachel was one of those tied for second place. Ruth Matthew from Hawthorne School did the Churchville Schoolhouse. And first place went to Abby Thomas from Jackson School. Who did the Elmhurst Conservatory. The top first, second, and third place winners are on this poster, which will be displayed in City Hall. And there is a little bit of information about Ruth Strand. So we want to congratulate all of you again. And I think we should get a picture.
Do a quick picture up front.
Sure.
Put this poster in front.
All right.
We can step up a little bit.
Right here.
All right, ladies, come on, follow me. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Probably.
I got to see the many years ago when she was little.
The who?
The grown-up one.
Oh, okay.
On their blankets.
Oh, cool. No.
Ladies, I'm going to take this poster and then walk around and take the hands of each individual and they want to
Our
say
neighborhood.
congratulations.
You're shaking hand. She's got a big sister. Big sister's like.
It's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Congratulations, man. You did great work. Good job.
Congratulations
Great job.
again.
Nice. Way to go. Nice job.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good work.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. It's work. Congratulations. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Congratulations.
Good going, sweetie. Good going. Very good. Congratulations.
Great job. At this time, I'd like to ask Lance Walker to join me at the podium here. Lance is a board member for the Kickoff for Kids charity, an Elmhurst-based charity that does a lot of great work in town. And Kickoff for Kids has a Star Educator Award, and I'm going to allow Lance to take over and fill us in. Mr. Walker?
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate all the support that City Council gives the education community tonight. Congratulations to all the contestant winners that did a great job. And my name again is Lance Walker. I'm from Kickoff for Kids, and we're a local charity group that supports a variety of children's organizations. And one of the things that's really near and dear to us is a Star Educator Award. It's basically a Teacher of the Month award. And what we do, we take nominations from students, parents, or teachers, and each month we select the best nomination, and to that teacher they get a $300 gift certificate to West Suburban Office Products to use for their schoolroom supplies, along with they get a personalized plaque. And tonight we're fortunate enough to have the majority of those winners from this year here. So if I can bring them up, come on up. We kind of have them in order, so they're going to kind of worm their way around to the podium here. We've got the majority of them here tonight. You've got to remember school's out, so you've got some of the teachers are going to be out right now. But I just want to introduce each one of them and just give just a quick sentence or two from each of their nominations. So first, I don't think she's here tonight, is Janet Gross. She's from Edison. She was our September winner. And part of her nomination read, Janet has her finger on the pulse of every student in her classroom. She is keenly aware of what each child needs as an individual and goes out of her way to make sure that each child gets the proper guidance, encouragement, and attention. So we'll hold our applause till the end. It's kind of like graduation for time's sake. I don't want to take up too much time. So Janet Gross is, from Edison was our September winner. Our October winner was Leanne Ryder, and Leanne's from Field School. And after our Unit 1 pretest, you can tell this was by one of her students, after our Unit 1 pretest, we were so stumped by some of the questions on the test and thought we would never learn all of it. After Mrs. Ryder taught it to us, though, we look back on it as a piece of cake. She pushes us to do it, even if it seems impossible. While she can be tough on us, she is just trying to challenge us to learn more. Everyone knows you don't want to be lazy in Mrs. Ryder's classroom. As a parent of a lazy 8-year-old, she's going to have Mrs. Ryder in a couple years. So congratulations, Leanne. Our November winner was Kristen Widener from Jefferson. And her nomination read, Miss Widener is a great teacher and mentor to my child. Her guidance for learning and sculpting the children is very effective, and I have seen great results with my child. She is making a difference in my child's life. Congratulations. Our December winner is Sarah Izetto. She couldn't be with us tonight. I'll just read just a quick blurb from hers. Mrs. Izetto is an inspiration and a role model for what teachers in this district should be like. She is a caring and dedicated teacher. She is a type of teacher students go to with problems. She has faith and encourages all her students to do their best. Into the new year, our January winner was Nicole Glenn of Churchville. And this was by a parent. My daughter has improved her reading by 4 grade levels with the support and help of Mrs. Glenn. Through her hard work, commitment, dedication, and faith, she has gone above and beyond her call of duty to make a difference in our lives. Congratulations, Nicole. Our February winner was Jody Nebbia, and Jody's at visitation. Mrs. Nebbia is also a great communicator, sending notes and emails to the parents on students' progress and everyday achievements. Parents feel that they are in touch with the happenings in the classroom and are given tips and ideas to work with their kids at home. No matter what the situation, Mrs. Nebbia really loves her job and the kids, and it shows. Congratulations. Our March winner is Debbie Ruckstader. Debbie's from Lincoln. And the nomination wrote, for Mrs. Ruckstader works very hard to provide an engaging, creative, educational environment and tirelessly works to engage all styles of learners through assignments such as a teaching descriptive writing through our restaurant review project and having students create a bio-me boxes for the more kinesthetic learner. I need to almost get my dictionary out for some of those words. But it went on, it was very heartfelt. It was very touching, so congratulations, Debbie. Next, our April winner was Joe Schramm from IC Catholic Prep. And Joe Schramm is an iconic figure at IC Catholic Prep. He has been teaching English at our high school since the early 1970s. As the longtime department chairperson, Joe has been responsible for not only great student instruction, but also for faculty mentoring as well. He is best known for his unique approach to interacting with students, quoting Shakespeare in the hallways, for example, and is revered by his students as he is by his peers. Congratulations to Joe, and Joe, after 45 years, is retiring. That's worth a clap. Thank you, Joe, and congratulations in retirement. Our last of the group tonight is our May winner, and that's Dottie Gendris from Jackson. And they wrote for Dottie, she respects her young students, listens to them, treats them as unique individuals, is infinitely enthusiastic, and always goes above and beyond to make the parents of her students feel listened to. So congratulations, Dottie. And all our winners. So we just want to appreciate the great educators that we have here. I think, boy, whether it's on the public or private school side, everyone does a great job. And I think the more teachers I talk to, the more parents I talk to, everyone says, oh, you're going to love so-and-so if you get them. I've never heard a bad word really about any of the teachers, so congratulations to all of you.
I don't see. I know where you're pointing, but I don't.
Stuff. We can't have it back. Some root beer. Behind your York thing. Okay. There's some pens. Oh, yeah.
What's that? It's a fluorescent, and then right next to him,
I don't think.
I would have looked at this earlier.
in the back.
What's that? Cheerios.
What's my niece is here.
What else is in there?
It's an old rubber band.
I used to put that up.
You might have
Your eye rollers up my arms. All I need is this. I'll get those. There's like eyeballs.
All right, let's get to business now. Are you done?
Here's another pencil. On the other side. The one you write right. Is there a 45 there?
Congratulations. And I can make it up.
Oh, there should be.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Thank you. Congratulations.
This is your new job. Congratulations.
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 Doing a lot for the.
Congratulations. Enjoy your summer.
Retirement.
Congratulations. Enjoy your summer. Congratulations for being down. How often am I going to see you?
Good work.
Appreciate all that.
Don't trip on the steps.
Great job putting that on.
Enjoy your retirement. Did you teach that guy over there on the screen, Kennedy?
Do we,
He went to high school.
Congratulations.
Jim,
The only one from Lincoln. Did you have either
I don't
of the
know.
Lynch boys?
Around when you were,
The grandson?
Slowing down the process?
I'm glad to
thanks
hear it.
for all you do.
thank you for all that you do.
I think he's waving at you.
I didn't know who was on.
Congratulations, Mr. Graham.
You're right on the internet. Look, look. He wants to say hi.
Is it in here?
Enjoy your retirement. I hope you have hobbies. Congratulations.
How'd you print it
Okay.
out? Did you print that out?
I printed it out today.
Did it work? Oh, okay.
I had the email. I called him. I said, hey, who's coming to present? Yeah. If you could look at mine.
Don't forget it. You know what I
If I need it for the RFP.
I don't know if two people can be logged on.
Sure how that happened? Probably not.
Garbage cans.
Okay, we'll let those folks who want to exit clear the room.
Word docs. Jim. Username, password?
Yeah, I emailed it to you.
Okay, I got it then.
Okay, on with the agenda. Agenda item number 3, receipt of written communications from the public. Is there anybody at this time who would like to submit any written communications to the public? You may do so now.
For the text amendment?
Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. That's our public forum where we invite members from the public to speak. We ask that you introduce yourself, state your address. Please wait to be recognized before you approach the microphone. You have 3 minutes, and we ask that you direct all of your comments to the council. At this time, is there anybody, Clerk Spencer, is there anybody who would like to address the council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll start with Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Okay, Mr. Pagash, if you could introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Claude Pagash. I live at 566 West Gladys. Before I make any public comment, I would like to ask the mayor and the city attorney if Mr. Kennedy can have any participation or whether his vote will be accepted by this council, since when the clerk asked if he was present, he indicated he was. He's not present.
You can be.
Mayor, attorney, what's the ruling?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is public comment to share concerns of the public with the council, not to raise something that would have to do with a quorum requirement, which if any council member wants to do so, they may.
Agreed. Mr. Pagash, please continue.
Well, let's put it this way. Then my commentary will be that, number one, I personally feel that Mr. Kennedy cannot take any participation in this meeting, whether Mr. Levin agrees with it or not. Well, let's put it this way. Last meeting I was here, and there were 3 aldermen that had a little discussion about whether we should pay over $1.77 million for a gas station. Mr. Levin's comment was, we've had discussion, and it's the best we can do. Well, I would like to tell Mr. Levin, if that's the best that the city can do, is pay more than 20% for a gas station, then maybe what we ought to do is replace the negotiators, because he accepts it. That would mean that if somebody came to do work on his house and the bill was 20% more than anybody else, he would accept it. I do not. Another aspect of it is I do not understand how the city, now that we own the property, can allow somebody to use it without paying any rent on it. If the negotiators came up with that, then again, we should replace them. Because they're not looking out for the interest of the residents of this town, they're looking out for individual residents. Sorry state of affairs. Well, we must go on, shall we not? Okay. There is an ordinance in this town that says if your income is at a certain level, you may come and apply to this city to get a tax refund. I received a letter from the city talking about all the wonderful things like picking up weeds and what the new things are going on in town. I did not see in that letter anything about that ordinance, nor have I heard from any of the aldermen making a public statement under their right to make a comment to tell the public that it is available to the public as a whole. It's an ordinance, gentlemen. It comes up every year when taxes come up, but the failure to reproduce it in the paper, the letters from the city, or from any alderman that sits on this bench that was elected by the people is a sorry example of government. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Clerk Spencer?
Mike Killian, 481 North,
Howard.
Howard. Thank you.
Killian?
Mike Killian.
Mike Killian, 481 North Howard, here in Elmhurst. I came to the meeting right after the flood on April 18th. I brought up a couple points about robocalls in the case of a flood. Brought up about new homes being required to put all the water into the storm sewer. I took 5 feet 4 inches of water this time. Right now I'm up close to $9,000, $10,000 in just out-of-pocket expenses or things that I've had to buy, and I'm still working on it. I heard other people complain about this downspout issue on new houses going into the storm sewer. I understand that's a policy decision of the council. I'm please asking the council to give us an answer at some point in time. I brought up about, at that time, who could give us some help on pumping out the basement? They said, well, that's your issue. I asked about sandbags. Well, I found out that we could get sandbags, and I got sandbags now at the head of my steps, because that's where the water comes. Right up the driveway, down the, from the storm sewer down the basement. I retired in 2007, and it said buy Elmhurst, so at that time I put in a new furnace, hot water tank, sumps, trying to get ready for retirement, bought a new washer and a new refrigerator and stove at Plask, because I thought it was buy Elmhurst, you're trying to get taxes. Well, I found out that people aren't keeping track of where the taxes come from. The gas station's going out. I wonder how much tax they paid. It seems like nobody wants to have a gas station in this town nearby, especially a Marathon, an American station, but they're definitely losing out on a lot of taxes. And I just don't understand that. We made calls here last week. My wife had to take her for a test, and she had been fasting, so I took her to eat. I get a call from the neighbor. He said, you better get home, you're starting to flood again. There's ponding on the street. And I've talked now several times with the engineer that we got a flooding issue where the sewers can't take all the water when you have the heavy rains, but when there's only one intake for a long block from Lake Street halfway up, and we pond. Call it ponding or flooding, and if you get a lightning storm, you expect it to go out there in the middle of a lightning storm, try to rake out the spinners or leaves or whatever debris is in the intake. And that's ridiculous. somebody's going to get killed. I said, what would it take to put in a side grate into the curb? And well, that could be $2,000. Well, that's peanuts compared to what somebody's life could be. I'm too old to go out there, but I've had to do it.
Mr. Killian,
thank God we live in the neighborhood where they help us out. So,
Mr. Killian, you're at 3 minutes. I would ask if you could wrap up, please.
okay, well, I'm disappointed in the city of Elmhurst like Claude here. I think you can do a better job, but I'm asking for some action on things that keep getting talked about. Thank you.
Next, we have Julie Ahrens, 475 North Howard.
Hi, I'm Julie Ahrens at 475 North Howard. I happen to be Mike's neighbor. We did a renovation in Elmhurst here. I've lived here 23 years, and in the last 5 years, I've taken in water 3 times since my renovation. The city required that we bury our downspouts and our sumps into those downspouts, and because of that, I get water every time it rains. And it doesn't, the city's telling us, oh, it's a heavy rain. That's no excuse for our street flooding. My house on April 18th, along with Mike's and Carol's, was an island. We couldn't get out of our house if we needed to. There was water front and back, totally encasing us. These buried downspouts are killing us. We had just finished putting drywall up in our basement and have to cut it out because of the water damage. We didn't get 5.5 feet. I feel lucky I only got 13 inches, but 13 inches is a big deal to us. We can't finish our basement because of it. This has never been a problem, and we've been told by the city a couple times on our phone calls, we didn't know you were flooding. That's a lie. On April 18th, the police were on our street and put up a caution tape at the end because we were totally underwater. It was impassable. A car got stuck in there. Since then, we've called every time it's rained now since April 18th. Our street is impassable in front of about 3 or 4 houses long, and you can't get through. Alderman Brum caught that last Thursday when he tried to get down our street. Saw it firsthand. We don't want the city telling us it's not an issue. We found out from the city that we're on a list to be repaved this summer. We don't want repaving. We want the storm sewers fixed first, and then we'll worry about repaving. If you can't get that repaved, if you want to repave it and it's still flooding, it's not going to save us anything, and it's just becoming more of an aggravation than anything, because all of us have to throw stuff out of our basement every time it rains practically, and it's unusable space. If we can't live down there, if we can't use the space. We paid to add a basement onto our existing basement when we did the renovations, and now it ends up underwater. So, never had this issue. I love living in Elmhurst, but I'm frustrated now with this whole water issue, and I want somebody to come out and fix our street and stop the flooding so we can go on living. We couldn't get our cars out if we had to. We couldn't get out of our driveway, and basically couldn't get out of our house because we were so engulfed in water. Thank you.
Sue Ansel, 473 North Howard.
As you can see, we're having our annual block party here at the meeting. Mike lives next to Julie, and Julie lives next to my husband and I and our 2 sons. We've lived here 24 years, and since 2009, our street floods, and it's not just with 100-year rains, which I understand is simply a term at the quantity of water, not the years since the last rain. So I understand that. The issue for me is there is something wrong with our pipes, or whatever you want to call them. The water is not going where it needs to go. And now we're reading about a plan to tear up places to have retention areas for water. In our case, it's not that there's not room in the retention spots where our water is supposed to go. The issue is the water can't get there. We have recently found out, and it's my fault that I was ignorant of it because I made an assumption, and you know what assumptions do to us. I assumed that we had a pumping station somewhere in our line. We do not. We depend on gravity. Ever since 2009, the water doesn't go where it needs to go. Within 2 hours of something happening, it's like somebody pulled the plug out of the drain in our bathtub. And once the water starts going down, it's gone. There's something not working right. There was one winter where 4 driveways were torn up because pipes were broken. We're in the north end of the city. There is a lot of new construction going there. I don't necessarily blame the new construction, but changes in everything, the amount of cement that people are allowed to put on their property is ridiculous in our area. But what I'm trying to say is what I would like to have someone get for me or tell me where I can find it is exactly what is the path and when was the last time somebody actually examined our pipes. I also have a concern because I am very involved with youth sports. I'm very concerned that we are considering tearing up multiple fields that are used by multiple youth sports groups within the city. I'm very much involved with AYSO, but I also referee for the team Elmhurst. The lacrosse players are now taking over. Julie is very involved with baseball. What is going to happen to these programs and how are we going to keep these kids busy? Because our green spaces, if they tear up the places that they're deciding to tear up, it's going to impact our children greatly, and that scares me. The other issue that I'd like to bring up is I work in Gurnee. I came home from Gurnee today. I would like to know exactly where they worked on their retention area and what a wonderful job they had done up there, because the last storm, Gurnee was underwater. So before we consider following this plan, we had better check thoroughly with these other cities that what was said to have happened actually happened, and that they were able to retain the water away from homes during this last storm, because at Gurnee they didn't. Okay? So don't spend your money until we know what actually happened with this last 100-year storm. So, thank you.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street. Please preserve all the comments for the public record. It was a tough couple of weeks since it's day 47, tough couple of weeks since the last council meeting. I'm not sure if I should say day 47 or day 5, because Thursday the underpass was flooded and closed. I'm getting texts while I'm at work trying to restore our phone system from a 3-second power outage. Having to come home, trying to figure out which way to get home, and will I be able to get home, because we can't probably get to the hospital during the event on April 18th, since people had to walk across the railroad tracks to get to our houses to help. So, you know, it's just been a lot of terror in our neighborhood. When I got home, a 4-year-old boy next door was running out of the house, and I thought he was running out to play. He had that exuberance of a 4-year-old child, and he was like, "It's gonna rain!" And I was like, "Oh, okay, sorry," you know. And his family was running to get their second load of sandbags. Their first vehicle was down, practically scraping the ground. It was also full of sandbags, and they were sandbagging their house when I got home. or when I was leaving for the 7 p.m. session for the flood mitigation meetings here, when the parking lot also here was completely full of water. There was a lot of parking spots that you couldn't get to. I learned as my other neighbor was going to the 6 p.m. meeting that her 10-year-old son didn't want to go out that night with his father because he too was afraid that it was going to rain, and he didn't want to be home he didn't want to be out if it was flooding in the neighborhood. So the level of stress in the neighborhoods is still very high, and the need to be working on the projects is high. And it would affect kids if you do rip up parks in schools, but it also affects kids if you don't. So you got to keep that all in mind. We did appreciate the job that was done with regards to how the workshop, the open house went on Thursday. I heard good feedback from the one on Wednesday as well. Best wishes to the Geneva residents who will be coming this Thursday. We appreciated everybody who was able to come. We appreciate that some people weren't able to make it for other reasons. And so we thank them all for doing that. We thank the people who helped also. I did promise kudos a while ago. I want to give some kudos to city staff. It was a big improvement, the response in 2013 versus 2010. There's still a ways to go. But it was a big improvement. You did a really good job trying to get communication out. Our phones failed during the flood because the water was too high in the house, so it toasted the phone system. But one of the first calls I got was a message from then Mayor Levin giving one of the robocalls, so the communication was a lot better this time. We appreciate Alderman York, you coming to our neighborhood at 5 o'clock in the morning and personally observing and meeting with a lot of our neighbors and seeing what it's like to be there in the middle of a war zone. And we appreciate the city staff who took our calls at 4:30 and sent someone almost immediately to see why there was manholes coming up still in our neighborhood since the water had gone down. The sanitary system in our neighborhood was charged for 24 hours, and we were personally pumping out our kitchen sink until 4 the next morning. But we appreciate the response. It was a lot more responsive. We appreciate, because of the fact that I've been coming, that people were reaching out to us as well and finding out how it went, and we do appreciate all of that. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last person that signed in for public forum. So.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak who did not have an opportunity to sign up at the beginning of the meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 5, announcements. Any aldermen or other elected officials? Clerk Spencer has an announcement.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just would like to announce that the Elmhurst 2013 Relay for Life will be held on Friday, June 7th at Barron's Park. Opening ceremonies are at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to announce, as Kathleen Sullivan already did for me, the June 6th, which is this Thursday's Stormwater Mitigation Project meeting or open house. That is the project that will potentially utilize East End Park, and that impacts the Geneva Avenue and Clinton Street. So I wanted to make sure that all residents are aware of that for this upcoming Thursday here at City Hall, the hours between 6 and 8 p.m. The other announcement I would like to make is to the Howard residents. I would like to thank you for coming out and speaking tonight, but also inform you, if you don't already know, that the city is investigating what can be done for the flooding issues on Howard. The one I would call low-hanging fruit of replacing the current sewer grates with more, I guess, water-friendly, less debris-friendly grates is in its works, and the city will investigate further and see what else could be done for that area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other announcements? Alderman York, and then I'll go to Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Your Honor. On June 10th to June 14th is Bike to Work Week. I happen to live near the train station, and there are already a lot of residents and even folks out of town who ride their bikes to the metro station in Elmhurst and park in there and take the train from there. There will be an information booth at the Elmhurst Metro Station on Tuesday, June 11th and Friday, June 14th from 6:30 to 8:30 a.m. It's co-sponsored by the Active Transportation Alliance, but there will be information on biking to work, and there will be free coffee for those who bike to work. Also on June 11th, we'll be riding out to the DuPage County Complex with Chairman Cronin. I think we're leaving at 7:30 in the morning from the gazebo on Spring Road, and I know Alderman Gutenkopf's been on that trip before, but it's a lot of fun, and we look forward to encouraging people to find alternative transportations to and from work. Thank you.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Gutenkopf and I will hold a coffee and conversation meeting on June 20th from 7 to 8:30 at Courageous Bakery, which is located at 108 West Park Avenue. The coffee and conversation meetings provide an opportunity for residents to hear updates, ask questions, and share ideas. The topic of the June meeting is safety. Elmhurst Police Chief Michael Ruth will present an overview of the police department's strategies and will participate in the discussion. And all First Ward residents are invited to attend.
Very good. Alderman Levin.
On this Wednesday, June 5th, the Elmhurst JCs will confer their 2013 Distinguished Service Award upon Alice Doyle, a most deserving recipient. The last day, actually, I think, was today to get tickets, but if you call the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce, they may be able to accommodate what should be a very fine event.
Okay. Any other announcements? On to agenda item number 6, the consent agenda. At this time, is there any item that anyone would like to pull and have further comment or discussion? Alderman Mulliner?
Item E.
I'm sorry, item E? E. Any other items to be pulled? No other items to be pulled. Okay, at this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, less item E. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman York. Clerk Spencer?
Levin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner. Absent. Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, that motion carries. On to item E, Clerk Spencer.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the City Council approve the utilization of $150,000 of funds from account number 510-6056-502-80-13 sanitary sewers for the overhead sewer program and thereby enable approximately 30 additional overhead sewers to be installed through the city's program. Respectfully submitted, Public Works and Buildings Committee. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Chris Healy, Vice Chairman, Diane Gutenkopf, and Michael J. Bram.
Okay, a motion to put this item before the council. Motion by Alderman Healy, a second by Alderman Bram. Alderman Healy, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is similar to what we did 3 years ago after the floods of 2010. As we did then, we had a rush of residents who were affected by sanitary backups sign up for the overhead program. We had funding as originally budgeted for $40,000, which is approximately 8 projects. We have approximately 77 people that have signed up. That doesn't mean they're going to go through it, but they're signed up. So like we did 4 years ago when we moved some money from the sanitary sewer lining program, we moved $150,000, or we're proposing to move $150,000 this year. Where that $150,000 comes from is the excess budgeted amount from what we had in that originally. The bid for this year's work is for less than we had budgeted, so we decided to move the excess budget amount to the account. All the slip lining that we had planned to do will be done. We are not cutting back on slip lining at all. This was just extra money in the fund that had the flooding not occurred and had these people not signed up, would have gone into the general fund, would not have been spent, but we felt it best given the situation that we move the funds.
Okay, Alderman Mulliner, I believe you pulled this.
Yeah, I pulled this for the same reason that 3 years ago I pulled this, or I did the same thing. This is a wonderful project. I think it's a great thing to be able to provide funding to do overhead sewers, but we've had 3 years now to look at some other solutions in addition to this. I think this is one of a multitude of solutions that should be on the table for the public to use. There are homes that cannot do overhead sewers, that would like to be able to put in check valves, etc. This cell specifies just overhead sewers, and I believe that this is something where we, during a 3-year window, we should have had an opportunity to add the additional things such as check valves, potentially removing downspouts from the sewer system. There's a variety of different things that we potentially should be adding to this, and they have not been added. And in a 3-year window, I would have thought that we would have been able to do that. So that I support the concept of this, but I will not support this report because I believe it's missing a major piece of what we should have been doing in the last few years.
Any other comments? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly appreciate Alderman Mullner's sentiments. I do think that it's important to remember that there was an extensive evaluation conducted by the engineering firm that we hired that took some time, as well as a task force evaluation that gave recommendations to the Public Works and Buildings Committee, and we are in the process of evaluating and acting on those recommendations. Check valves is an important component of this, and we believe that the most effective way to incorporate funding resident check valve installation is to also ensure that that project helps remove clear water from the sanitary sewer system. So we've been working on drafting policy that will allow for that to happen. Just because this report currently identifies overhead sewers as the only available, as the only option that would be able to access the funding, once we get the check valve policy completed and passed by the council, there's no reason why it wouldn't also be covered under this umbrella as well. The intent of our check valve policy is that it be covered by the overhead sewer funding. So I appreciate those comments, and I think it's important to note that once we get that policy finalized and through the city council, it will also address that removal of clear water from the sanitary sewer system, just like the overhead sewers does. Those will be available to residents too.
Any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Alderman Mulliner's sentiment, but I will stand here today and ask that he supports this report solely based on what the report is doing, and this is enabling additional residents to share in an incredible program that the city offers, where barely any, to my knowledge at least, other municipalities offer this type of program, being a share up to $5,000 for an overhead sewer for a private residence. So I think that the report, what its intention is, serves its purpose, and that I hope that all support this report. With that said, I concur with Alderman Mulliner's other statements and sentiments of needing to act feverishly on the other policy issues that we have before us. In our last Public Works Committee meeting, my first in 2 years, I made those statements public as well. I believe that we need to hit this from a multi-pronged approach, and the policy is just as important as the infrastructure improvements. And at least myself, speaking on this committee, will continue to drive down that road to make sure that both policy and infrastructure improvements are moved forward on as quickly as all possible. But my last summary statement is I would ask Alderman Mulliner, as well as everybody else on the dais, to support this because it is an incredible program. We do have the funds to support the extra households that this would impact. And anybody out there who is not aware of the overhead sewer program, please look at elmhurst.org, investigate it if you don't have one, because it's a great program that the city offers to benefit private residents. Thank you.
Any other comments? Clerk Spencer.
Healy.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner, absent. Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
11 ayes, 1 nays, 1 absent.
11 ayes, 1 nay. That motion carries.
Wait. Is that right? Yes, that's right. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
That motion carries. Sorry. On to agenda item number 7, reports and recommendations of appointed and elected officials. 7A, that's me. A couple things have been highlighted already a little bit, but we did have so far 2 of our stormwater mitigation meetings, one on May 29th and one on May 30th. They were both well attended. I want to thank city staff for their work in putting that together, and also the folks from Burke who stayed to answer all those questions. A reminder to all Elmhurst residents who potentially sustained damage, the FEMA folks are still around and available. You can get that information on the website. I have talked to several residents, all of whom have gone through the process, and they're telling me it takes, their experience is anywhere from 7 to 10 days before they get a check. But it's been communicated it's a relatively painless process. So if you are, if you did experience damage that's not covered by insurance, I would encourage you to go to the Elmhurst website and check out the FEMA link. You can apply online, or you can call their 800 number. I am still in the process of interviewing folks, potential candidates to replace me as 6th Ward Alderman. It is my goal to have somebody, I'm looking at my calendar here, to present to the council by the next meeting, which is the 17th, which means my plan is to have that information in your packets that you'll be getting on the 13th or via board docs. I think City Manager Grabowski is going to touch on this. Congressman Quigley, U.S. Congressman Quigley held an event here this morning, and I'll leave it to City Manager Grabowski to fill us in on that. The City of Elmhurst, along with Choose DuPage, Classic Cinemas, and Elmhurst City Center, is hosting a real estate forum for brokers this Wednesday, June 5th, from 3 to 5 at Wilder Mansion. And then finally, the last report would be, and it kind of snuck under the radar, under item X on agenda item 6X. And I just want to point out, as this council committed to, we did structure an intergovernmental agreement with the Park District, very similar to the one that we did with the school district, with the appropriate changes addressing directly to the Park District. But I think it's a win-win for both the Park District and the city in terms of revenue share, and we appreciate their support. And with that, I'll go to 7B, City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I'll continue on your comments regarding Congressman Quigley's Federal Information Resource Fair today at City Hall. He had representatives of FEMA, General Procurement, Homeland Security, along with some state agencies, IDOT and DCEO. There were approximately 30 to 40 people that attended, not just from the city, but from surrounding communities and other agencies. I was able to connect with the regional FEMA director, which was beneficial for 2 reasons. First, as the mayor said, they are taking applications for assistance, and we've heard a number of people say that they've been denied. There's an appeal process where if you go to the Lisle Police Department, where FEMA has set up their temporary office, you can appeal the denial if you feel the need to do that. And then secondly, he's going to put me in touch with the local IEMA, Illinois Emergency Management Association director, to discuss local project assistance for Elmhurst. So I was happy to make that connection today. Secondly, as was mentioned earlier, we've had 2 of the open houses for the flood mitigation projects. We decided to hold these in smaller groups to allow the residents to ask more detailed questions about the areas and the projects, and I think that's proving to be a good format. We received a number of compliments on that, it is allowing more time for detailed questions. The first meeting, which was the southwest portion of town, we had approximately 100 residents who attended between the 2 presentations, one at 6 and one at approximately 7:15. The second meeting was the Pine Street and Seminole Cottage Hill area, and we had approximately 35 residents who attended those. We're hearing, again, that these are well received and that residents are appreciative of the detail that we're able to give them and also the progress that we're showing. Of course, the most frequently asked question is the timeline. When are we going to be able to move on any of these? And as everyone here knows, we are working with the school district and the park district on that. And along that, we've been asked to attend the June 12th Park District Board meeting. We received a number of questions from the Park District, which we're working on answering. They are asking for a presentation on the sites, so it'll be myself, it'll be Director Hughes, and staff from Christopher Burke Engineering to give that presentation and answer their questions. That meeting is going to be held at the Abbey at 7 p.m. They're moving it from the normal space to accommodate the presentation and perhaps increased number of attendees. I believe they're going on a tour of the parks before that, so their posting will most likely be for 4:30 or 5 o'clock. They are going to take a tour of the parks and then come back, and at 7 o'clock we'll be at the Abbey. The last thing I would add is that the presentations from the 2 meetings that we've had, along with all the boards which are here in council chambers now, are on the website and on the city website under the storm information. So if you'd like to see that, feel free to log in. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Any other reports and recommendations from elected officials? Seeing none, we'll move on to, Assistant City Manager Kopp drafted the Hahn Street RFP. I'm going to set this one up by saying that I think this is our 3rd shot at this, Mr. Kopp, maybe 4th. And similar to last time when we discussed this, the city staff was seeking comment from the aldermen, and similar to last time, those comments that were received from the various aldermen, I think Alderman Deuter, Alderman York, and Alderman Levin opined on this round, and I think it was Alderman Bram who asked, are we going to have another shot at this? This is, and obviously with the Pauli property situation finalized, I think it's the hope of this council that we'll have a good conversation tonight, come to a consensus, and be able to give city staff direction to move forward with this. So with that in mind, Assistant City Manager Kopp, do you want to set us up a little bit and go through the individual comments?
I'll try to get the latest version up on the screens right here so everybody can see them and go through them. But slight history, as Mayor Morley spoke, last November we came to the City Council with the hope of starting to develop the RFP for Hahn Street. And the one thing that had to be determined prior to that RFP going out was the city control all of the parcels. And we went through 3 times we've been back to the City Council, got input from the aldermen and made those corrections and changes and kept moving it forward. And the last time we met, we were waiting to make sure that we control all the parcels before we move forward with it. And I'll just go through some of the changes that were suggested. I know you saw on board docs up until just this afternoon, the only comments on there were Alderman Deuters, and but since then, Alderman York has had a couple minor suggestions as far as moving things forward. We'll go over some of those real quickly here. The first change you'll see on page 5, and that was the bolding of purchase and redevelopment to emphasize the fact that we're looking for the purchase of our property as part of the RFP request. And then we changed it to 9 city-owned parcels. There's actually 10 lots, but 2 of them have the same parcel identification number, so to clarify it, we said 9 city-owned parcels. And as we go through here, we just give an executive summary of what we're looking for. And the main thing in the RFP we talked about before was using the Tracy Cross study was for first floor retail back to the residential component. And we also put in there the city will consider any other proposal that provides the highest and best use of these parcels. So any developer that thinks they have a good idea that'll go there, the city would consider that. And then Alderman York just wanted to clarify when they were due to make sure that people were aware that they have to have their proposals in to the office of the Assistant City Manager by 5 o'clock on Monday, August 12th. And we'll take them up until that time. If they're not in by that time, they will not be reviewed. And then it goes through the introduction, basically talks about Elmhurst, brags about Elmhurst, all the good things we have going for it. It's our location, the schools, the parks, the businesses, and our great location. Kind of talks about the site profile real quickly. The site's 120,750 square feet, where it's located, what boundaries it has, and lists the specific parcels that are there right now, and identifies that 260 North York Street is currently, this property is under contract to the City of Elmhurst with a closing date of July 10th, 2013. So only one day we don't physically own at this time, but we have the contract and a closing date of July 10th, 2013. Also identifies as a tax increment financing district, and it's in TIF 4, and there's 2 SSAs, SSA 6 and 7, that this property's in, and we just, Alderman York want to highlight that SSA 7 expires in 2014, and its future is yet to be determined. Talks about the zoning being a C4A district, and the requirements of C4A, that a site development plan review is required, and that the C4 district doesn't have any setbacks for parking or buildings, but at that specific location, there's a 4-story, 45-foot height on the York Street side and a 35-foot height on the Addison Street side as it melds into the residential district over there. And that there are some parking requirements, like in C4 there is no parking requirements. In the C4A there are parking requirements, but it's less than the normal commercial districts. It's 2 for office and retail, it's 2.5 for residential, and it's 10 for restaurant, 10 spots per 1,000. And it talks about the 1,500 square foot lot area coverage and the floor area ratio not to exceed 4. Then it goes through the site development objectives, and these are the areas that will be evaluated by the City Council. We'll evaluate each applicant, and there's a scoring process further down the RFP. The parking solutions, the one thing that's important to point out is that there's 100 parking spots there now in the lots we have, and we're requiring that there be 100 spots, public spots after, plus the spots that are required for the development. We're looking for architecture that fits the downtown we have right now, and fits our design guidelines, which are attached to the RFP for all the applicants. Sustainability, obviously the city's looking for any type of sustainability to go above and beyond what is normally considered environmental amenities. LEED certifications look favorable. The stormwater, the City of Elmhurst, we're good stewards of the environment, and we're looking for more than just what the DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance requires, looking for best management practices. Any of those type of things that are added, we looked at favorably in the evaluation process. And then we're looking also for inclusive design, that the design of the products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible, and those are just part of the design of the buildings rather than something that has to be specialized designed after the fact. Pedestrian, bicycle, amenities, and open space. The big thing we're trying to accomplish here is the connection between 3rd to North Avenue with the rest of the downtown. And so we're looking at the pedestrian and bicycle amenities to tie those two together. And then an open space, looking for an open space to be part of that project. An inviting open space, visible, people can see it, feel welcome to come there and enjoy the space. Talked about possibly having some kind of public art in there, whether it's a fountain, statues, just some green space. And obviously, City Council looking for that open space to be inviting. And then consistent with the downtown plan and the codes, obviously it's got to meet all the codes, whether it's codes and ordinances, but not limited to zoning unless zoning relief is pursued, building and life safety codes. The ground floor space is going to be devoted to retail space, and when we talk about the redevelopment agreement, the public-private agreement, that we're going to make additional assurances that those tenants, those approvals, and that they're retail space. Probably similar to what we have right now with the agreement with the Schiller deck was my thoughts would be on that, but that we're looking for retail space for those, for the first floor. And there's just some points on the 2006 plan that are highlighted in here regarding building height. So I'm going to talk about respected existing scale of the downtown, avoid extreme differences, building height, but there's also talks about somewhat taller buildings may be appropriate adjacent to major intersections or other selected locations, provided they are more centrally located. And that what building codes Elmhurst follows, and that we're looking at adopting the 2012 code at this time, and our projected adoption of the code is the summer of 2013. It'll go through the DPZ committee and then through the city council. Talk about the building guidelines. Those are part of the 2006 plan. And then City of Elmhurst participation. Here's where some changes Alderman Deuter suggested, and the elimination of the last sentence in that first paragraph. The city has purchased the properties along Han and York Streets to support the revitalization of North Downtown Business Plan, and then specifically stating what the city paid for the property, and that part of the development or part of the proposal will be a purchase of that property, and the proposed purchase price will be consideration of the selection process. And then the elimination of a paragraph that talks about the TIF and what possible TIF incentives or TIF financing assistance and streetscaping, streetscaping, public improvements such as utilities, York Street improvements, and on-site remediation as needed. Part of that on-site remediation was on there to make sure that we're clear as far as that we know that there's some contamination on that Pauley property. We're committed to working with the development team to get this done, and that there's 100 spots are required, but the city will entertain more parking spots if a developer has a means of making that fit into the project. And then the submission requirements, it goes through all the requirements as far as what's going to be required. We've talked about this a number of times. There's quite a number of them. And at that point, there'll be interviews or presentations at the city council meeting. We're looking for the proposal to be back August 12th. Then there'll be a presentation to the city council for the city council to choose finalists. The finalists will be interviewed, and then there'll be authorization to negotiate a public-private redevelopment agreement with the preferred applicant. And here's the categories that we talked about before: parking solution, quality architecture, pedestrian amenities, and so on. And this was determined. We did a survey of the city council and thought and had their impression of the weighted percentages for those different categories. And so each category will be rated 1 through 10, but then it'll be weighted based on the survey that was done by the city council. And then there's more detailed requirements by the finalists, and the finalists will do a presentation. October 28th is when the presentations are scheduled right now. And all these dates in here are based on us releasing this RFP on June 10th. If it gets released after that, obviously we'll move the dates as needed to line up with everything else. And this here was another, when I was meeting with Alderman Deuter, that items 3 and 4 are asking similar things based on the individual or the entity. And we're just in discussion with the city attorney. They felt that make them similar in how stringent they are, and to get that not just with the entity but also the principles as far as pending litigation. And I think that was all the changes that were on there. And now I'm just looking for any kind of other suggestions or changes that City Council would like to discuss.
Okay, I did see some head nods earlier when I said we were shooting to get this done tonight and get it out, so let's keep that in mind. I counted about 8 comments, and let's see where we go with this. Alderman York first, and then Alderman Deuter. Alderman York?
Yeah, just a question. Thank you, Your Honor. Mike, just for the record, Assistant City Manager Kopp, just for the record, what was the original draft date on this report? And then when was the last time we were talking about this? Just to kind of get a couple things.
Originally, it came to the City Council November 16th, and the exact date we met last time, it was either end of February, beginning of March.
Okay.
I don't know the exact date.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I have some other comments, but if you want to go to somebody else,
We'll go with Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give the context for a couple of my suggestions. My sense is that the city's approach to this development should be to get as much as possible for the public in terms of open space, creative stormwater management, and parking for as little cost to the public as possible. And I think ultimately this negotiation will happen with a selected developer, but I think setting the tone in this RFP is important for those negotiations. On the, one of my suggested changes was to take out the paragraph about TIF assistance from the city participation section.
That's pardon me, I think that's page 13.
Correct, right.
So
Page 13 has a list of ways that the city might participate in this deal and support that it might lend to this deal. I think it's very important that this project is within a TIF district. I think TIF is a great tool to help facilitate development. We mentioned earlier in the RFP in a site development section, I don't know what page that is, but we mentioned that this site is within a TIF. I think if City Council thinks it's important to identify what some of the TIF eligible expenses are, we might consider doing it there, and we could mention the on-site remediation in that section as well. My only reason for suggesting that it be taken out of the city participation section is just that we don't have, if our sense is that we don't, that we only want to put as much subsidy into this deal as is required. It seems to me that in approaching the negotiation, we should not have all of our cards on the table. I know TIF is likely to go into the deal, but I think to have one section where we list all the possible ways that the city might contribute financially is putting a lot out there, and I think I question whether or not it's necessary and whether or not that might convey the wrong message to a developer that we choose to work with. So that was the context for my suggestions.
Okay. Alderman Bram.
Yeah, just a point of order before moving on. My assumption, Mr. Mayor, would be that we would be addressing each individual comment until we get some type of consensus and then move on from there. Okay, thank you. So my comment in regards to Alderman Deuter's changes, I couldn't agree more. I think that any savvy developer will be looking to try to negotiate with the city as much as possible to get the best deal for themselves. I think if any of us has ever played poker, you don't sit there and lay your cards on the table and then try to raise a bet when your opponents know exactly what you have in your hand. And I think by going too far here, I think we should reserve what we are even considering using as a negotiation tool. Any developer worth their salt would actually know that this property is in the TIF district. To mention it once is fine. To define the TIF district is fine. But going past that, I think, is above and beyond. It's almost like we're saying, here's the carrot, and then putting it in their mouth. So I think that to expose some of our tools in our tool chest or negotiation tools is one thing, but I think the language in here is important, and it's a little bit too strong. Alderman Deuter's recommended changes, I think, are bona fide and accurate, and I duly support them. And I have some other comments in this area, but I'll reserve those until we get through these initial comments or changes. Thank you.
Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think just a couple of things, just to touch on a few of them. On page 5, with regards to the bolding.
Point of order. I thought we just clarified that we're going to stick to this exact change and not move to other pages.
That's not what I heard, Alderman Bram. If you want to clarify, I thought we were going to discuss all of it. But
That was my statement as I led my commentary, was that I thought we were going to get consensus on the proposed changes first before moving on to other items.
Well, some of us are
one at a time.
Well, here's what I suggest. When you said proposed changes, I thought you were speaking in total as it related to all of them. I would say this. I think it would make sense for people to comment to what they want to comment to. When it winds down a little bit, we'll go down each individual comment and see, or if there's any specific changes that want to be made.
That's another way to go.
Thank you. Alderman York.
Well, thank you. In order to accommodate Alderman Bram, I will go to the City of Elmhurst participation, and I'll give you my thoughts on those.
It's your choice.
Very good. I think contrary to the point of Alderman Deuter and Alderman Bram, I think savvy developers understand what a TIF district is, and I believe that they kind of comprehend what some of the tools and the toolboxes are. So we can leave it out, but it's pretty common knowledge. So I would suggest that we leave it in there. I would suggest that we perhaps tweak some of the language to soften it up a little bit. And you know, in that third paragraph under section 6, the development site is within the North York Tax Increment Financing District, and as such, the City of Elmhurst is able to help finance. So that would solve it, and not making it sound like a statement that it's there and we're going to do it. So I think that most good developers will realize that it's there, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to have it there. I think it will eliminate more proposals and it will help generate, and as I look at the whole broad spectrum of this thing is, I think if we have 20 or 30 choices, it's better than having 2 choices, and then we can bring those to the table, go through our evaluation process, get down to the few that make sense to us before we start splitting hairs on everything. So that would be my suggestion there. On the second paragraph of that particular section, the one that begins "in order to facilitate," I think the first sentence is perfect for that one. I think from that point out, it should be something along the lines, and I've got it written down here so I can repeat it for people when they need to hear it again. The second sentence would be, "The cost at which the developer proposes to acquire the property from the city will be one factor in the selection process." So we're not telling them what the price is. They can figure that out. I'm sorry, we're going to eliminate the second sentence, and what I just read, it will become the second sentence of that paragraph. Okay? So we'll eliminate the total acquisition cost of these properties was $10 million, and the sentence that we'll replace will be, "The cost at which the developer proposes to acquire the property from the city will be one factor in the selection process."
Point of clarification, Alderman York, I think you're talking about taking out the second sentence, and your second sentence that you're putting in is really the new third sentence. So there are 2 sentences in what you're proposing, is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
The original first sentence, eliminate the second sentence as printed, and then my sentence I just read, yes.
Which replaces the third sentence.
Yes.
Then. All right.
Yes, but now there will only be 2 sentences in that paragraph. So that's what I would recommend there, and then if we want to continue the comment here and finish this.
Well, let me make sure I understand what you said there, Alderman York. You're proposing, right now the document we're looking at has...
it's up there.
Yeah, we had the third paragraph eliminated. You're proposing keep that in with one minor modification.
2 minor modifications.
Which were, could you repeat
At
those
the end
again?
of the first sentence, Mike, if you can get down there, the development site is within the North York Street Tax Increment Financing District.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, the city of Elmhurst is able to finance municipal projects. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Able to help finance. So the, and as such and help are the only 2 additions in that sentence.
So, paragraph 3, as such and help. And then the paragraph above, you're proposing keeping the first sentence, and then you have replacement, let's just call it replacing of sentence 2 and 3.
Yes, with one sentence.
Okay, let's stick with that one for now in terms of comments. Alderman Gutenkopf?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that we're trying to do two things. A, we're wordsmithing, and B, we're introducing what should be the substantive discussion, which is it the will of the City Council to include in the RFP the purchase price and the list of potential TIF incentives we might use. So rather than wordsmith this, which would be my preference not to do that, I think the substantive discussion is really, do we include in the body of this document the cost that we paid for the property? Is there value in stating out in front of everybody, look, it cost us this much, so we're asking you to come up with a dollar amount that you're willing to pay, but keep in mind, this is what we paid, or what our taxpayers paid, what the city paid for this property. So I think that's the substantive discussion. And then the other piece of this is, should we be having a substantive discussion about whether or not to include the list of potential TIF incentives? Now, I believe that there's value in pulling that out of this document because, as has been mentioned, a savvy developer is going to have some sense of what potential TIF incentives could be, but by putting it in there, we're making a declarative statement that we're willing to include or potentially use all of these incentives. And I'm not personally willing to offer all of those incentives. I'd rather see a developer come to us and say, look, I know it's in a TIF district, and here's what I'm asking you to give me based on what has been typically done in a TIF. And then I think it is our job to look at that and say yes or no, or to begin a point of negotiation. I do think that by defining the potential incentives within the body of the document, we've opened ourselves up to an argument that we've offered them. And by pulling it out, then I think we're making a clear statement that it's kind of up for that final discussion. So rather than wordsmith what's the second sentence and what's the first sentence, I think that's what we should be talking about. So in that vein, I'll state, I think we should say clearly and unequivocally what we paid for the property if we're asking a developer to make an offer on it. And I think we should not state the list of potential TIF incentives we might be willing to make, because I think that gives us a stronger bargaining position. And so rather than try to rewrite it, that's what I'm going to that's where I stand on this project.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that we're trying to wordsmith, and I'm not in favor of that, but I also think we're trying to overthink this. I certainly understand the points. I certainly understand the desire to communicate that how much we've paid and that we may have an expectation of what to get back, but the reality is that $9.5 million we've paid has been over the course of 10, 11 years. And that the current value of that money may or may not be $9.5 million. So to try to say this is what we paid over the last 12 years and this is what we expect back, or I honestly don't think that matters. I mean, we're going to try to do the deal that's best for the city. We're going to try to recoup as many dollars as we can during the development. We're going to try to make the decision that's best for the city of Elmhurst, giving all of those criteria that we've framed. And as far as the list of potential incentives, you know, using Alderman Bram's equation or example of a card game, there's nobody that's going to sit down to this card game and not know that those are out there, whether we say that in the RFP or not. And ultimately, we have the decision, we have the ability to say no. You know, the very fact we're talking about these things right now in front of the cameras, in open session, I'm willing to bet half the developers are watching it right now. So, I understand the points. I certainly understand the concerns, but I'm not too concerned with whether we put $9.5 million in there, whether we put a list of potential incentives in there. When it comes down to the actual deal-making time and the qualifications and the analysis, you know, we know what we're after. We know what we're going to be looking for, and we can say no. So I don't want to spend too much time wordsmithing, trying to get into the heads of developers. Most important thing for me is we do come out of here tonight, let this thing fly, and see what comes back. Thank you.
Mike Kopp, you want to interject something?
Just clarify something on the TIF incentives. Those aren't just a list of incentives. There's many more than what's in there. Those are contemplated because that streetscaping, which is the pavers in front of the project, or if there's any improvements at York Street that have to happen, we're contemplating that we would probably take care of that as we've done with other developments. We've paid for it. The developers normally put them in, but we've paid for that portion of other developments. And the part with the remediation, that was something that the city attorney thought we should put in there, just so it's open out there that there is some remediation needs to be done on the parcels. And we can write that in some other way if the city council feels that's it. But really, those were listed as streetscaping and York Road improvements, as we do with any other development that has happened in downtown. I mean, there's a myriad of other possible TIF incentives.
Alderman Levin.
Well, I think I'm going to tie into some of the comments that have gone before me. In terms, this is an invitation to people to come in and talk to us. So on the price one of what we paid, and I spent some time talking with Alderman Deuter, and I think a number of us will share the concern that we've got a significant investment out there, and we don't want to just give the property away. That being said, as we had this discussion, it occurred to me that that 9.5 million, as Alderman Healy was suggesting, is a meaningless number and may in fact scare developers away, such as, you think we're going to buy this from you for $9.5 million, which maybe they will, maybe they won't. But the fact is, these properties were acquired over 12 years, in between which we've had a recession. And we all have talked about why we might pay a premium for a property, because we've assembled it. Hopefully that will also swing the other way. We've put some value to it because the developer doesn't have to do what we just did. So the real cost that the developer needs to look at is, we've got an assemblage of properties that, and we might have acquired them in many cases, that might have the Hahn Street building on it or the Paul I Marathon Station on it. They don't care about those buildings and the value those buildings bring to the land. In fact, it's a cost to them to take those down. So they're looking at square foot value in a prime downtown area, and whatever that is, that's what they will be looking at from a developer side. So if you say, well, we paid $9.5 or $10 million, and you think bringing it back, it may turn people off. So I think by going with what Alderman York stated, which is to say, we assembled it, we bought it, and the price at which you're willing to pay, whatever you said, to acquire it from us is a significant factor. I think that sends a message out there that as you talk about all the wonderful things you're going to do, the amenities you're going to bring, and all the other things in there, you better be telling us this is what we're going to be paying for the property to you. So that price is scary, could be scary, doesn't add anything to the equation, and it's wholly irrelevant. In terms of the TIF, I kind of looked at it maybe the opposite way. Yeah, we all know, we're all saying it's a TIF district, and it's in here. I actually look at saying these are of the whole array of things that might be done with TIF money, we're pointing out the 2 or 3 that we're saying we're offering up is what we would like to do. So instead of saying TIF money's available, come in and apply and tell us what you want to do with it, we're kind of telling them what it's available for. I'd rather leave it in. I'd rather leave it narrowed like that to suggest those are the kind of things that we would do with it. And if you ever look at any other community, remediation costs is a very traditional kind of use of TIF funds, so it's not going to surprise any developer. I'd rather leave it in. There's nothing to hide about it, and I'd rather leave it narrowed. So I think I would support the concept of without wordsmithing, taking the price out that we paid, let them figure out what the land is worth. It's a competitive RFP, and I'd rather leave the TIF language in with narrowed list of the small kinds of items that we are putting on the table.
Alderman Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to what Alderman York's wordsmithing proposal, it does soften what was currently in there, so I don't mind that too much. Conceptually, I agree that we can't go out there and demand $10 million necessarily. It's whatever the market's going to bring to the table. But with that said, I don't want to show all of our tools in an RFP. I don't think that's the point of an RFP. The RFP is supposed to be stating clearly on what we as an elected body would like to see. And especially the one item that I highlighted on this very page that says that the city will work with the development team to relocate and/or bury utilities to complement the proposed development. To me, that is saying that we as an elected body are committing to doing that for whoever the proposed developer are. The other items that are listed in this section do state that we will entertain doing each one of those bullet items, if you would. And if we feel necessary to leave all of these items in, then I believe that this item should also state that we will entertain doing that, just like the other items do.
Alderman Bram, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Additional comments, Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listening to what's been said, I would agree with a lot of the comments that were said, and one that struck me was Alderman Levin saying it's a competitive RFP. And I'm thinking, on the other end of wordsmithing, looking at this as a whole document, how can we create the most competitive scenario? What can we do to invite the most developers and the greatest number of projects to choose from? And I think that includes leaving it up for interpretation, stating that we understand that there's a value here, and we expect to use the purchase price as a factor, but also leaving the TIF information in there so that a developer may or may not choose to include that, and we'll have more choices if it's in there, I believe. Thank you.
Alderman York?
I'd like to make a motion that we eliminate the cost basis from the RFP.
Alderman York, let me, go ahead and make your motion. I want to make a comment as the chair. Go ahead.
Okay, that we eliminate the cost basis from the RFP and that we retain the TIF wording with some changes to soften what we would do.
Okay, before I ask for a second on that motion.
You must ask for it.
Oh. Do I have a second? Alderman Levin. Before I entertain conversation, as the chair, I want to propose something that I think will allow us to get to the end on this. And I see we really have three things here to discuss. One is the $9.5 million, the specific mention of that. Issue number two is whether or not we identify that it's a TIF district and maybe some minor modifications within that. And then issue number three is all of the other comments. And what I'd like to do, and we'll go ahead and consider the motion, although I'm going to have to ask him to repeat it. What I'd like to do is break it up into those three items. All the other comments, are there any other comments that have either been highlighted or any other comments that we need to have a conversation about? Then I would like to give the opportunity, what I think would make sense for this council, because I believe it's the consensus for everybody on this council to move forward with this project. I'd like to take the two individual items that have been identified, bring those to votes, allows those to go up and down, to allow people to voice how they want to vote. However, I also want to give everyone on the dais their opportunity, if those motions pass or fail, to support the entire RFP when it comes to a final vote. Does that make sense? Alderman Bram, you seem perplexed.
It makes sense.
I'm going to assume everyone understands what I have said. Alderman York, your proposal, did you have both the TIF additional wording and the...
Yeah,
I think I got it.
Clerk Spencer has it.
Alderman York moved to eliminate the cost basis from the RFP and retain TIF wording to soften up a bit what the city would do.
Okay.
He's just suggesting, Mr. Chairman.
I understand that. I think we can quote wordsmith after we've come up with those two issues. Alderman York, do you want to move forward with your motion as is, and Alderman Levin as a second, or do you want to break those into two individual?
No, I'm fine with the motion, but to go, if I may.
Yes.
You brought up the other point. Are there any other comments?
We can tackle that after this.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Alderman Gutenkopf?
Yes, now that we're discussing the motion.
Yes.
I do have a question, because what I understood Assistant City Manager Kopp say hasn't really been addressed, and that's that Assistant City Manager Kopp referenced the city attorney and said that the city attorney suggested that some of this language be included. So I'd like to hear either from the Assistant City Manager or from the city attorney why that recommendation was made, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more, because what I'm hearing and what we're discussing sound like two different things. So my understanding is that the suggestion was made to include this language about the city using the TIF financing, that the city would take on the responsibility for the streetscaping and for the remediation. That's not what this says. This is passive language that says something soft about, well, we'll kind of consider doing it. But kind of what I understood him to say was that the city is trying to state in the RFP that it will be our responsibility to do the streetscaping and the remediation. And so I think that's an important point to discuss.
That's not the way I understand it, but Mr. Kopp, if you want to clarify what you stated.
The city would contemplate those specific things. Those are things that we've done in the past in other projects. So we would take a look at, basically, except for remediation, their off-site TIF eligible expenses, such as the streetscape. That's the pavers on the street. I mean, we've done in the past, that's what we've done in projects. The developers actually install it, the city's paid for it, is what we've done in the past with those things. If there are any improvements that have been done on York Street off-site, off the specific site of the Han site, we would contemplate doing those. Okay. I don't know that saying that we would do them, but that's what we've done in the past. We would contemplate whether we would continue to do those in this development, it's done in past developments.
Okay.
The remediation was there by the city attorneys.
So we're not requiring the city to do it for clarification purposes. You didn't state that the city's requiring the city's participation in any of this. That's what I just heard.
Correct. We'll contemplate taking care of those things as we have done in the past. That's really what we're saying in there. Now,
in general, if I can summarize, as one of more than a few TIF participation expenses, if you will. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I didn't get that.
It's just one of many things. We're not requiring it. The city's not saying they're obligated to do it.
No,
That's what I heard.
I mean, yeah. I guess in the big picture, city council can do a number of TIF incentives. These are some that we will contemplate doing as we've done in the past,
okay.
Basically. That's the way we put
All
it
right.
there.
Alderman Gutenkopf?
Yeah, I'd like a follow-up to that then. In that case, I don't think this is worded particularly well to get that point across, and I think that strikes me as what Alderman Deuter was responding to, is that these are two of those potential discussion cards. A, we want the streetscape to match. B, somebody has to pay for it. And we're saying in the RFP that we've done it before, so we would think about doing it again. Well, I think that's silly. I think we should either say, yes, we're going to do it because we want it to match and we've done it for everybody else. Because what developer in his right mind is going to come to us and say, oh, yeah, no problem, I'll pay for that? They're going to come to us and say, well, you did it for everybody else. How come you're not paying for it in this project? So either if we want the streetscape to match, and we've always paid for it, why don't we just come out and say it? And then with the remediation component, if this is a TIF-eligible project, then we're really serious about getting it done.
That's all right. We'll go with
Well, then I think we should decide. Either we're going to pay for it and we offer that up, but he's got to buy the land from us, or we say, no, it's going to be your responsibility, you're going to do it. And this is really wishy-washy. And so if the city attorney has advised us that we should be paying for the remediation, then to say it is contemplated is kind of goofy. We should just say, we're going to do it. And say it's TIF funding, it's TIF eligible, and we know it needs to be remediated, so we'll remediate it. And that's a change I think we should decide to make.
Well, I'll ask the city attorney to clarify any opinion that they've offered on this.
We were trying to only identify another, for example, item that would be used in a TIF. Streetscape would be one, remediation might be another, and then a series of number of other things could also be used. But they were only meant to be examples, not meant to be requirements that we would in fact reimburse. We don't even know what the total remediation is going to be yet, so we weren't really suggesting that that would be a mandatory thing, but nothing more than an example of things that could be done. But we did say we thought it ought to be included as an example because it would at least give a developer the heads up, which of course they're going to have already probably, that this property is in fact dirty. And it's a property that does need remediation, it does need cleaning up. So by way of example, to assist in streetscaping, public areas in the project, and remediation. That was our intent. That's why we added it.
Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually don't like Alderman York's motion for two reasons. One, it does lump the two issues, at least as I'm seeing the issues of purchase price and TIF eligible expenses and whether to include them. It includes them both into one motion, and also it's a little ambiguous there at the end where I think the terminology was soften up. So I don't like the motion for those two reasons. I would rather us, and I think, Mayor, this is where you were going, let's tackle the purchase price one first via separate motion, discuss that, agree, disagree, up, down, move on, and then let's talk about the TIF eligible expenses to include whether we want to include remediation as an example or we want to include streetscaping as an example. I stand by what I said originally. I honestly don't believe this is specific to the RFP, including them in the RFP. I don't think it's that big a deal. Those things will be addressed down the road, but to worry about them too much being part of the RFP, I'm really not too worried about it because eventually we make those decisions anyway. Eventually the developer's going to say, are you or won't you? We're going to say yes or no. Whether we put it in the RFP, I'm not too concerned about. So back to my original point, I'd like to see Alderman York's motion actually pulled back, separated. Let's talk the two and move forward. Thank you.
Alderman York, I tend to agree. Are you willing to separate the two?
That's fine. Let's.
And Alderman Levin, with the second, are you willing to withdraw that motion and just do your?
Yeah, let's just do one motion at a time.
Okay, so that motion is withdrawn by Alderman York and Alderman Levin. And why don't you? I'll give you the floor back and make an initial or another motion.
So the first motion that I would like to make is to eliminate the cost basis from the land cost basis, the property cost basis from the RFP.
Okay, that's a motion and a second. Alderman Levin. Okay, let's stay on point here. Whether or not to include the dollar amount in the RFP for the acquisition costs of the property. Alderman York, you've already made a case. Anybody else want to discuss that? Keeping the property cost in. I don't see any additional discussion. So, to clarify, we are voting in this case. Alderman York's proposal, seconded by Alderman Levin, is to remove reference to $9.5 million and wordsmith in something similar to what you had before. We can tackle that after the vote. Fair enough? Clerk Spencer, please call the roll.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner, absent. Gutenkopf.
No.
Goiter.
No.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
10 ayes, 2 nays, 1 absent.
10 ayes, 2 nays. That motion carries. We will remove reference of the dollar amount of the acquisition out of the RFP. Should we tackle the actual wording right now while we're on point? Alderman Levin?
I think with the will or the consensus of the council is not to do the wordsmithing, and I think we're going to have to leave it to the mayor, the city manager, the city attorney, and all the other luminaries who do this kind of wordsmithing. If it were a committee of 3, we might be successful, but with 15 or so, I'd say
Okay.
carry on.
Okay.
Second that motion.
That motion passes to be wordsmithed. Alderman Levin, do you have a second motion? Alderman York.
Well, why don't you go ahead and make this motion?
Well, to keep it from being overly specific, my motion will be to leave in the discussion in this section 6 regarding TIF financing with a few examples of the kinds of costs that might be covered by TIF in this project.
Okay.
I'll second.
That's a motion. Second by Alderman York. Back to conversation on whether or not to leave references that the North York Street TIF actually exists in this.
Point of order?
Yes.
If I can get clarification of the motion, because of the fact that that paragraph I've already stated says that we will be doing the relocation and bearing of the utilities. It does not say, like the other ones, that the city council will entertain. So to me, that's not an example. That is a commitment by the council if we're leaving it in there. So is Alderman Levin's motion including that as a commitment and not an example, or is it leaving it out?
Well, as is, it says contemplate.
No, the next paragraph.
Next paragraph, sir.
I guess my motion would be to make them both the kinds of things that we would consider or contemplate in that section.
Okay, so that would be inclusive.
No.
Okay, so the paragraph underneath that has not been changed, we would soften that.
Say entertain.
Entertain, as we are entertaining this motion. Alderman York? Oh. Assistant City Manager Kopp, you want to add
As
to
far as the
conversation?
common utilities, our thought on that was there will be utilities here that probably will not be needed to be moved because of the project. Our thought was to make this a better project, to complement the project, we would assist in relocating utilities that would complement this development. So there may be, overhead power lines that are in the alleyways that would not have to be changed for this project, but we would contemplate or to complement that process to help relocate those utilities.
Understood. I think what I heard is that the council wants to make that less of a commitment and more of just another example. So, Alderman Levin.
Again, without wordsmithing, I think this is sort of like an advertisement. We're hiring someone. So you tell them all the wonderful things about the job, and the pay range is $100,000 to $200,000. And everyone comes in and applies, and you're like, well, we're not really going to give you that much. And what we're saying here is we've got a great area. It's one of the prime areas of our city. And one of the things that's around for us to talk about is TIF. And I think it's not a bad thing to highlight the fact that we've gone out and put this out there. And I think by putting a few examples out there of the kinds of things we're talking about, it's setting the scope. I don't want to narrow it too much by saying, well, we're going to do this, because I don't know if we're going to do streetscape. Maybe their proposal is going to be something that's going to fit in, but won't be exactly what's out there. And maybe they'll say, in terms of remediation, well, I don't want that from you, I want something else because I have my own remediation subcontractor. So by trying to make it more specific, we're turning it less from an RFP, like a tell us what you got, and to tell us what we have. This is kind of, here's what we have. We have a TIF, here's the kind of things we want to do, propose, we select the final candidates, and then we talk turkey.
Okay.
So I'll support my own motion.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, fine, I'll buy that. Then I think the language should say, these are some examples of some of the kinds of things, instead of, it sounds like these are the only two big things that we're worried about. It doesn't really say that, so let's make them clearly examples of some of the kinds of things that we might consider, and maybe there are other things that should be listed and not just these two.
Alderman Dunn.
Just a quick comment in evaluating RFPs. I think this is a good one. I think city staff has done a great job with laying out a very structured, clear, and fair process. So I think we're almost there, maybe 99% of the way there. As far as this particular element of the proposal goes, I would err for less specificity rather than more. It is called out earlier in the document that this is in a TIF, so it's clear that it would enjoy the benefits of being in a TIF. However, this is in a section called city participation, and if we don't explicitly point that out, I think that would be a little confusing to some of the proposers. So I would support the motion to leave it in with some examples with some low level of examples for some clarification.
Any other comments on this specific motion? Clerk Spencer would ask for a vote.
Levin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Ely.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner, absent. Gutenkopf.
I have to say, I'm not exactly sure what I'm voting on. I want you to read the motion back, please.
I don't know if I can on this one.
I can rewind it and say it again. The motion is to leave within this section 6 the language stating that that the city does have a TIF for this property, and that it will consider certain uses by listing examples of the kinds of things that we have currently as proposed in this draft.
But not exactly the language that we have in this paragraph now.
Because it would be wordsmithing, and then I would, yeah.
In that case, I'll vote yes.
That's a yes?
Oh, that's a yes.
Gutenkopf?
Aye.
Yes, aye, okay. Goiter?
No.
Dunn?
Aye.
Leader?
Aye.
Polumsky?
Aye.
Graham?
No.
Tipskin? 10 ayes, 2 nays, 1 absent.
10 ayes, 2 nays, that motion carries. Before I ask for a motion for a general approval on the entire RFP, are there any other comments, whether they are highlighted or not, any other comments or issues that any alderman wishes to bring up at this time? Alderman Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think we were talking a lot, most of our discussion so far regarding the RFP has been related to dollars and cents of the project, the economics of it. And I just want to voice my concerns on our weighting percentage. We have 8 particular criteria, and we have 18% of that devoted to the economics. The other 82% is what I would call form, fit, and function. I would still support it as is because we came to this as a consensus of the council. And we have some flexibility in the evaluation of the responses. Yeah, we're very concerned, obviously, on how much we paid for this land and whether we're going to get that back now or in the future. So that is obviously pretty important to the residents and the council. So in the evaluation, I think we may want to look closely at that particular element. That's it.
Alderman Mulliner.
I think we've got a good RFP here, and I think one of the things that I know all of us are keeping our eye on, and I want to make sure that the public understands, is that this process that we're going through has taken a long time, but we're going to have a building there that I would hope is going to be there for the next 100 years that'll be funding us with taxes and with people coming into the community and living in the community and us having a structure where we can have maybe some retail on the first floor. I think that I go back to one of the first things that's mentioned in this. We can keep wordsmithing this as much as we want to, but the reality is one of the first things that we mentioned in this RFP is if you've got a better idea, give it to us. So what we want is the best idea for the city of Elmhurst, and we want to get the best ideas out there. These people who are going to be sending us RFPs, they're smart. They know what's going on. They know that we paid $9.5 million. They know that this is in a TIF district. They know what type of incentives we've given to everybody else. So what we need to do is get this RFP on the street so that we can start collecting on some of those tax dollars as sooner the better. So I support the RFP as it stands right now, and I'd like to get it on the street so we can get moving with this project.
I'm going to go to Alderman Levin, no. You're usually over there. Alderman Leader hasn't spoken yet.
No, I purposely waited till the end, which I assume we finally reached. No?
We're close.
Then maybe I should wait till the end.
You secede? You want to give the floor back to me? That's fine. If you want to be the last, we'll hold you up there.
I want to be
Norm.
the last one to speak.
Mine's a point of order, actually.
Yes.
If we're discussing, I understand, to continue, I am not objecting, and I certainly want Alderman Leader to have the last word. But, is the second to last word, I don't know what we're voting on because it's not an agenda item. It seems we get a consensus and then the staff puts it out. Are we, because I thought
we're going to ultimately, as I mentioned before, we'll do a final vote on this RFP tonight.
But my point of order is, can we? It's not an agenda item to vote on.
I checked with City Storino,
and B, do we need to do it? You know?
I think it's a good idea from a belt and suspender standpoint, and Attorney Storino also recommended that we do a final vote as well. So the plan is, yes, to do a final vote.
Point of order on that.
Yes.
I agree with Alderman Levin. I actually double-checked Alderman Gutenkauf's agenda because coming in, I was not expecting myself to vote on this because even though it's under the reports and recommendations section, it does say just Assistant City Manager Cap, draft Han Street RFP. It doesn't. This is not formulated as a report. So if it's not formulated as a report, how can we vote on this? So that was my confusion coming in. Even though it's under the appropriate section, it's not written up as a report.
I understand. I had talked to City Attorney Storino about this prior to the meeting and asked, how do we wrap this up? And his recommendation at the time was that we can do a final vote on it. But I'll turn it over, and certainly we can go with the will of the council, but I'll turn it over to City Storino.
I want to hear what Alderman Mulliner also has to say on the process. I assume the comment, if Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Mulliner?
My take on this is that we should not vote on this evening, that what we should do is ask for a consensus, and then that would give us an opportunity for Assistant City Manager Kopp to finalize these final little things that we have it at the next meeting, and then move this thing out at the next meeting with a final vote. I would agree with Alderman Levin and Alderman Bram that we truly don't have even a motion on the floor right at this moment. We have a draft on the floor that we're changing on the fly, and if we're approving something, we really need to have a final copy of what we're approving. So I would say ask for a consensus, and then let's move this thing forward.
Well, a further point of order, if I may.
Why not?
Anytime we've done these, if they're done in executive session or committee of the whole, I thought, people have been here longer than I, but it seems like we get to a consensus of the council. We've had this before the council 3 or 4 times. We've resolved every issue except for words. We don't have to, I don't think we have to get into that wordsmithing. If it's the will of the council that we've finished it tonight, then why can't staff take it and go forward? I don't think any developer is going to be looking at it less seriously without a vote behind it. So my preference is, I guess my point of order would be, can't we just get the will of the council and do it?
Well, I think the only way to solve that is you can make a motion to take a vote on that tonight. Otherwise,
It is. There's enough, the whole point of having things on an agenda is to provide, under the Rice Lake case, enough notice to the public that they know that an item is being discussed and that it's not being brought up without the ability to know the items on the agenda. This item was clearly posted on the agenda. So when the mayor asked me, do I think that we can go discuss it and actually vote on some of the things? We did vote on some of the issues in a piecemeal fashion, and I think we can do the same here. I certainly understand what the aldermen are saying about, I think actually Alderman Levin is saying, we don't need to vote at all, we just need a consensus. I understand what Alderman Mulliner is saying, that maybe we ought to come back because we don't have a final draft. But in terms of complying with the spirit of, as I say, the Rice Lake case, I think it's on your agenda. Everyone in the public knows it's there. They had an opportunity to speak to it if they wish to.
I'm going to recommend that we do bring it back to council. It says draft on the agenda, and that's really, if we want to be as safe as possible, I don't want to kick this off and stumble out of the gate. It says draft. I've got aldermen that are concerned. That's going to be my recommendation, but I'll defer to Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With City Attorney Storino's comments in regards to the legal function of this, I would agree. I think our MCO does state, though, that we need to follow the report ordinance timeline or procedure, I should say. I am willing, and I would recommend that we do this accordingly at our next meeting, but have a committee of the whole meeting to get this out as quick as possible next week before committee meetings, and we can approve it in that format if that is deemed necessary from a timeline perspective only. I do have some other wordsmithing things that I would like clarified. If it is preferred to take this offline with Assistant City Manager Kopp, I can do so. Otherwise, I can mention them here. Your preference.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been sitting on this project for 8+ years. An extra 2 weeks, probably not going to hurt things too much, but I would sincerely ask all of my counterparts that once staff does all their wordsmithing and City Attorney Storino's had a chance and everybody's had a chance to do their thing, that we come as a council prepared to move forward in 2 weeks. The last thing I want to see is another proposal after all of the wordsmithing, and then we're looking at another copy with more yellow that delays it 2 weeks. We got to move forward. And we all have a responsibility to read the report or read the RFP, get back to staff right away so that come Monday night, we're ready to go. I'm not saying that didn't happen this time, because I think it did, but let's get done in 2 weeks, and whatever the chair feels comfortable having the agenda say, let's make sure it says that. I tend to agree with the mayor that because it says draft, we can wait 2 weeks, but I just don't want to see us wait another 2 weeks because 1 alderman, 2 aldermen, 4 aldermen are concerned about an if, that, then, or or let's make sure we're ready to go in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Go to Alderman Mulliner, then I'll go to Alderman Levin.
I have a question for the city attorney. On an RFP, as we're sending out an RFP, is it a requirement that we have a vote from the city council? If it's not a requirement, then why don't we do what we've done? And I do recall in the past we have done consensus and said, you know, let the staff finish it up and let's get this thing moving. I mean, I have no problem with doing that. I mean, I believe we have consensus, you know, with some wordsmithing, and I think we can finalize that wordsmithing in the next week. I'm just throwing out that as, you know, trying to just muddy the water a little bit more, just because I wanted to.
Mission accomplished. Alderman Levin.
My point of order was only whether or not we could vote. My preference is to get this done tonight. I do not believe that we need or the majority want another round when Alderman Bram's concerns can be communicated to Assistant City Manager Kopp. I was just trying to lead us down the right path to get done. I'm not trying to say put it off. So if City Attorney Storino is saying, I mean, if I thought we were just going to say, yes, a consensus, go forth, but if the mayor feels that a motion is necessary, I'm prepared to make the motion based on the legal opinion of the city attorney that we may do it. But however we go, I do not want to there's nothing left to do.
The RFP does not need, you know, you don't need to be.
It's not a committee report.
Yeah, you can. Is there anything that's precluding us from doing a motion? No, because there's enough notice of the public, and that's my opinion. It's up to the will.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
I'd really like to see the final version so I know exactly what we're sending out. So I don't have a problem with a committee of the whole meeting next week, just to make sure we have a final version in front of us so we all know what we're being issued, what we're issuing.
I think that's where we're going to leave it unless someone wants to make a motion. Otherwise,
I move that we pass the RFP, that we issue the RFP as we have it with wordsmithing based on the direction we have given tonight.
Okay, so we have a motion to move forward with the RFP and issue it based on The discussion and votes this evening, allowing wordsmithing by city staff. Second by Alderman Hipskin. Any discussion? Let's go with a vote.
Levin.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner, absent. Gudenkauf.
No.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
No.
Leader.
No.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Did everybody? I think so. Okay, I have 7, no, not right. 5 ayes, 7 nays, and 1 absent.
Yeah, no. Motion fails. 7 noes, 5 ayes. We'll bring it back on the 17th for a final vote. Alderman Mulliner, before I move on to other business?
I would just like to make a comment similar to Alderman Healy's. Let's just make sure that we get this thing. If you've got any comments, let's get them into the staff so we can get the wordsmithing done, so we're done. We need to get this on the street.
Agreed. I consider this a belt and suspenders move more than another opportunity. I think plenty of good conversation was had tonight. We're looking for some simple wordsmithing. Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we move on to agenda item 8.
No, wait. I have
Before.
a comment on this.
Oh, you wanted to?
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought you were just reminding me.
No, and I want to make sure that I'm in so that Alderman Leader has the last word.
Yes, that's where I was going.
So, I would just like to say that I think I agree with Alderman Bram that this is worthy of a committee of the whole meeting to get it done next week rather than waiting 2 weeks. I couldn't agree more that we just got to get this done. This is bordering on ridiculous. So I would like to propose that we have a committee of the whole meeting next week, get the things in, get the final draft out on Thursday for comment, and let's get done with it. Thank you.
Yeah. It should be a special meeting. I don't know.
It would be a special, City Attorney Storino is recommending a special meeting of the City Council, not necessarily a committee of the whole. Let's get this clear before we move forward. I don't care if it's next month, next Monday, or 2 Mondays from now. Would the intent be to set it up so that there is a vote from this council?
Yes. No, the way we've proceeded now, we should take a vote by motion to approve the RFP. And I'm saying that to do that and have a motion, you have to do it at a special meeting.
It'd be a special meeting of the City Council.
Which doesn't change anything. We're going to be here anyway. We're going to notice it, and we're going to have that agenda item on. It just won't be at a committee of the whole. It's just jargon. It'll be at a special meeting. Because we're going to take an official vote. We're going to actually vote to release and approve the RFP.
Point of order, why is it a special meeting? Why isn't it just a meeting of the City Council if it's in 2 weeks? It's an agenda item that...
Clarification, this was, Alderman York had said, that if we wanted to speed up the process, we can hold a special meeting of the City Council next Monday.
I thought he said committee of the whole. Right.
And I was only referring to the fact that it's not a committee of the whole. Yeah. It would be a special meeting.
Alderman York, if you'd like to make a motion, you're more than welcome to that effect.
We don't need a motion. We can just.
Yeah. You can do a voice.
I'm asking for a motion.
I make a motion that we have whatever kind of meeting we need to have next week in order to get this accomplished.
Do I have a second? Alderman Mulliner with a second.
Wait, I'm not seconding.
I need a second. Is there a second?
What I'm seconding is that it's a special council meeting.
Fine. You're seconding that it's a special council meeting. Any discussion? Dare I go with a voice vote?
I would.
All in favor of holding a special city council meeting next Monday night, respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. We will set up a special meeting of the city council next Monday, prior to committee meetings, next Monday night. While we are still on this item 7C, Alderman Leader, is there anything you would like to add to the conversation?
Yes.
Can it wait till
Or do you want to
Point of
save it?
order?
Or can it wait till next week?
I have a point of
No,
order
it can't
question.
wait till next week.
A point of order.
No.
Yes, point of order.
Didn't our decision to continue this discussion effectively end discussion?
No,
on
it didn't. This is just a
item?
I'm going to allow Alderman Leader to speak. This is still just a discussion. We agreed to vote officially next week, but this discussion is still open. We have not moved on to the next agenda item.
Okay.
Alderman Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. What I would like to do, and that's why I asked to speak last, was to put this entire Hahn Street issue into a larger context. Because what we've had tonight is very, very necessary, but a little arcane for most of our viewers, I think. And so there's so much to this Hahn Street that goes beyond Alderman Healy wordsmithing. This is just such a big issue. So I've been involved with it for 8 years since I first came on the council in '05. And I would like to sum up some of my thoughts in a larger, broader context. Okay. To begin with, I am for a multi-use mixture of retail and residential. The city lives on retail sales tax, and the schools thrive on property taxes. To be against downtown economic growth and development is to be for higher taxes, less money for the schools, lower home values, and reduced city services. Elmhurst is not some sleepy little planet spinning in its own orbit. It is one of 250 communities within a sprawling, snarling urban network of 10 million people. We are in a harsh, constant competition for jobs, industry, commercial development, and vital retail and property tax dollars. Failure in this intense competition will have profound implications for the education of your children, the value of your homes, even your own personal safety. Developers are not altruistic. They are hard-nosed capitalists in a harsh business. They will invest in those communities in which their initial cost is low so that their profit will be high. They are influenced by other factors, but in the end, it is about profit. This cutthroat competition with other communities compels us to offer incentives as other communities do, particularly because we have placed tight restrictions, such as the height of what can be built, which limits a developer's profit. Elmhurst, like all viable and vibrant cities, has a long and successful history of offering incentives to those who are willing to invest serious money in our community. Incentives take many forms: tax rebates, land grants, and TIFs, to mention some. These incentives are an investment in the education of your children, your family's personal safety, and the value of your homes. As change is inevitable, we must take firm control of that change rather than be the helpless victim of that change. And that is why the city of Elmhurst is in the, quote, real estate business, unquote. The Hahn Street project is an example of such an incentive. The city of Elmhurst, prior to the Pauli purchase, invested some $7.8 million in real estate on Hahn Street since 2001. The key to the whole project is the Pauli property. Whoever controls it controls the future of the project. We have already spent this $7.8 million. A project of this perspective, whoever controls the Pauli controls the fate of our already spent $7.8 million investment. A project of this perspective magnitude has a potential life of 50 to 75 years, and it has the potential to bring in some $50 to $75 million in new revenues. The difference between the appraised price and the purchase price is $270,000. That is a reasonable price to pay to ensure the success of our original $7.8 million investment and the potential return of $50 to $70 million in new revenues, some 70%, which would go to our schools. Whatever is built should meld seamlessly into the Elmhurst of the past, the comforting Elmhurst of myth and memory, the romance of an earlier, simpler, more innocent time. I want to differentiate our downtown from everyone else's downtown. I want drivers on North Avenue who are blissfully unaware of our existence to be ensnared by a giant spider web of enchantment which will entice them into the downtown. Elmhurst cannot stand still. If it loses the momentum of its own progress, it will deteriorate and decline. The present must breathe life into the future. If we are not willing to offer incentives to fuel economic growth and development, then Elmhurst is on the downward path to the kingdom of dead cities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Leader. Always appreciated. Any other comments before we wrap this up? Seeing none. Other business. Item number 8. Is there any other business at this time? City Manager Rubowski?
No, sir.
Look for a motion to adjourn. Alderman York, followed by Alderman Deuter. All in favor? Aye.